The rain was a relentless drumming on the roof of his old truck, a sound that had accompanied Leo for the last hour of his drive home. It had been a long day at the workshop, the scent of sawdust and varnish clinging to his clothes, a familiar perfume of solitude. He turned onto the gravel path that led to his cabin, the headlights cutting through the wet gloom and illuminating the dense pine forest that stood as a silent sentinel around his property. This was his sanctuary, his escape from a world that had once felt too loud, too demanding. Here, there was only the whisper of the wind and the creak of old wood. He killed the engine and sat for a moment, listening to the rain patter against the windshield. A deep weariness settled in his bones. All he wanted was a hot meal, a book, and the profound silence of his own company. He shoved the truck door open and made a dash for the covered porch, the cold rain soaking his shoulders in the few seconds it took him to find his keys and unlock the heavy wooden door. He pushed it open, expecting the familiar scent of pine and old books. Instead, a strange, metallic sweetness hung in the air, like ozone and wild honey. He froze, his hand still on the doorknob. The house was dark, but not silent. From the direction of the kitchen came a faint, skittering sound, like small feet on the tile floor. His first thought was an animal, a raccoon, perhaps, that had found a way in. He reached for the heavy flashlight he kept on a shelf by the door, his grip tightening around the cold metal. "Hello," he called out, his voice echoing in the quiet cabin. The skittering stopped instantly. He flipped the switch for the main light. The living room flooded with a warm, yellow glow, revealing nothing out of the ordinary. His books were stacked neatly. His wool blanket was folded over the arm of the chair. Everything was in its place, but the feeling of wrongness persisted. He took a cautious step forward, his senses on high alert. Then he saw them. Crouched behind the kitchen island were two small figures. They were huddled together, shivering, their wide eyes reflecting the light like those of frightened deer. But they were not human. Their skin was a pale, shimmering amethyst, and their hair, white as fresh snow, was plastered to their heads and shoulders, dripping onto his floor. They were dressed in simple, silvery garments that seemed to be woven from light itself, now torn and smudged with dirt. The older one, who looked to be about 7, had her arm wrapped protectively around the younger, who couldn't have been more than 4. Leo stood rooted to the spot, his mind refusing to process what his eyes were seeing. The flashlight felt heavy and useless in his hand. He slowly lowered it, placing it on the coffee table with a soft thud. The younger girl flinched at the sound. "It's okay," he said, his voice softer than he intended. He held his hands up, palms open, to show he meant no harm. "I'm not going to hurt you." The older girl stared at him, her gaze a mixture of sheer terror and a fierce, defiant protectiveness. She pulled the little one closer. They were both trembling, from cold or fear or both. "How did you get in here?" he asked, though he doubted they would answer. He took a slow step into the kitchen, keeping his movements fluid and predictable. He noticed the back door was slightly ajar, the lock bent and broken. They hadn't just wandered in. They had forced their way in, desperate. He looked at their soaked forms, their chattering teeth. The solitary part of him, the part that cherished his quiet life, screamed at him to call someone, anyone, to take this problem away. But the deeper, more human part of him saw to terrified, lost children. He walked to the linen closet and pulled out 2 thick, wool blankets. He approached them slowly, knelt a few feet away, and held the blankets out. "You're freezing," he said. "Take these." The older girl hesitated, her eyes darting from the blankets to Leo's face. After a long moment, she reached out a slender, purple hand and snatched one, quickly wrapping it around her little sister. She then took the second one for herself, pulling it tight around her narrow shoulders. Leo stood and moved to the stove. He filled a kettle with water and set it to boil. The mundane action seemed to calm the frantic rhythm of his own heart. He pulled out a tin of hot chocolate powder, something he kept for the rare visitor, and prepared 2 mugs. He placed them on the low table in the living room. "Come sit," he said, gesturing to the couch. "It's warmer here." The girls exchanged a look. Slowly, cautiously, they emerged from behind the island, the blankets trailing behind them like royal cloaks. They sat on the very edge of the couch, their bodies tense. The younger one stared at the steaming mug with wide-eyed curiosity. "It's hot chocolate." Leo explained. It's sweet. You'll like it. The older girl picked up a mug and sniffed it suspiciously before handing it to her sister. She then picked up the other mug and took a small sip. Her eyes widened slightly, and she took another, longer drink. Leo pulled up his armchair and sat opposite them, giving them space. The rain continued to fall outside, but inside, a fragile, tentative peace had settled. He waited until they had finished their drinks, the color slowly returning to their cheeks. "My name is Leo," he said softly. "What are your names?" The older girl looked at him, her defensive posture softening by a fraction. "I am Senna," she whispered, her voice like the chiming of tiny bells. She nudged the little girl, who peeked out from her blanket. "Kira," the little one murmured. "It's nice to meet you, Senna." "Kira," Leo said. He took a slow breath, asking the question that had been hanging in the air since he walked in. "Can you tell me, where is your mother?" Senna's lower lip trembled. She looked down at her hands, clutching the empty mug. "Gone," she whispered, the single word filled with a universe of sorrow. Then she looked up, her luminous eyes locking with his. "She sent us here. She told us to find the quiet place by the woods. She said we would be safe." A cold knot tightened in Leo's stomach. Their mother was gone. She had sent them to him, to his secluded cabin. Why? How did she even know it existed? 100 more questions swarmed in his mind. But looking at their exhausted, heartbroken faces, he knew they could wait. "You are safe," he heard himself say, the words feeling both terrifying and utterly right. "You can stay here tonight." He got up and found some extra pillows, making a makeshift bed for them on the large, comfortable couch. He stoked the fire in the hearth until it cast a warm, dancing light across the room. Senna watched his every move, her intelligent eyes missing nothing. Kira, lulled by the warmth and the full belly, was already nodding off, her head resting against her sister's shoulder. As Leo turned to go to his own room, he looked back at the 2 alien girls curled up on his couch, their strange, beautiful features softened by sleep and firelight. His quiet life was over. A storm had literally and figuratively broken into his home. But as he closed his bedroom door, he felt not dread, but the first, faint stirrings of a purpose he hadn't felt in years. He was no longer just a woodworker living alone in the woods. He was a port in a storm, and for tonight, that was enough. Leo woke to the sound of soft whispering. Dawn was just beginning to bleed pale light through the windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. For a moment, he was disoriented, the memory of the previous night feeling like a dream. Then he heard it again, the delicate, bell-like cadence of Senna's voice. He rose and cracked his bedroom door open. The 2 girls were standing by the front window, their blankets still wrapped tightly round them. They were staring out at the rain-washed forest, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. "Have to find her," Senna was saying. "She will be waiting." "But the man," Kira whispered back, her small voice trembling. He was kind. "But we cannot stay. We must go to the glade." Leo pushed the door open fully, and both girls flinched, turning to face him. "Good morning," he said, keeping his voice gentle. "Did you sleep okay?" Senna nodded once, a quick, formal gesture. "Thank you for your hospitality. We must leave now." "Leave? Where will you go?" Leo asked, his chest tightening with an unexpected protectiveness. "You have nowhere to go, do you?" "Our aunt," Senna said, her chin held high with a dignity that belied her age. "She will be in the glade where the twin moons touch the earth. Our mother said to find her there if anything happened." The twin moons. Leo knew the place. It was a clearing deep in the woods, a spot where the trees opened up to create a perfect circle, a place he went sometimes to think. It was one of the reasons he'd built his cabin here. "I know that glade," he said. "It's a long walk for little legs. Let me make you some breakfast, and then I'll take you there." He saw the conflict in Senna's eyes, the desire for independence warring with the practical need for help. Hunger won out. "Just breakfast," she conceded. He made oatmeal with honey and sliced apples. A simple meal they devoured with a quiet intensity that spoke of more than one missed meal. As they ate, Leo tried to learn more. "Your aunt, what is her name?" "Her name is Alara," Kira piped up before Senna could shush her. "She sings the prettiest songs." "Alara," Leo repeated, the name feeling like a cool, smooth stone in his mouth. And your mother? Senna's face closed off. Her name was Lyria. She is with the starlight now. She put her spoon down, her bowl empty. We are ready to go. The forest was alive with the sounds of morning, birdsong, and the drip of water from leaf to leaf. Leo led the way, the two girls following close behind. Senna held Kira's hand tightly, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. The walk was quiet, filled only with the sounds of the woods and their own footsteps on the damp earth. When they reached the glade, the early sun was filtering through the mist, catching in the dewdrops that clung to the grass and wildflowers. And there, in the very center of the clearing, stood a woman. She was tall and slender, with the same amethyst skin and long, flowing white hair. She wore a simple, gray dress that seemed to shift in the light, and she was standing perfectly still, her head bowed as if in prayer. As they approached, she turned, and Leo felt the air leave his lungs. Her eyes were the color of violets after a rain, and they were filled with a sorrow so profound it was like a physical weight. Senna. Kira. Her voice was a melody, even choked with emotion. She dropped to her knees, and the girls ran to her, crashing into her embrace. She held them fiercely, her shoulders shaking as she buried her face in their hair, whispering words in a language Leo didn't understand. When she finally looked up, her gaze fell upon Leo. The sorrow in her eyes was joined by a sharp, wary gratitude. You, she said, her voice steadier now. You are the man from the quiet place. You kept them safe. My name is Leo, he said, taking a tentative step forward. And you must be Alara. She stood, gently disentangling herself from the girls. I am. Thank you for bringing them to me. When the energy surge faded and I could not find them, she trailed off, a flicker of fear crossing her features. I thought I had lost them, too. Energy surge. Leo asked, It is how we travel, Alara explained vaguely, her eyes drifting back to the girls. Lyria, their mother, my sister. She used the last of her life force to create a doorway for them. She sent them to the nearest place of quiet resonance, a place untouched by the noise of your world. Your home. The pieces began to click into place for Leo. His cabin, his solitude, had acted as a beacon. Their mother had sacrificed herself to send her children to safety. And that safety, by some cosmic chance, was him. I am sorry for your loss, Leo said. The words feeling inadequate. Lara nodded, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. She was brave. We are refugees. Our world is no more. We were fleeing when we were attacked. Lyria saved them. She looked around the glade, a deep loneliness settling on her features. And now we are here, alone. You're not alone, Leo heard himself say. The words came out with a conviction that surprised him. You have me. Alara's violet eyes searched his, looking for deception, for pity. She found only a steady, sincere offer. The tension in her shoulders eased, just a little. In that moment, standing in the sun-dappled glade with two orphan children and a woman who carried the grief of a lost world, Leo felt the walls around his own lonely heart begin to crumble. The solitary life he had built no longer seemed like a sanctuary, but a cage he hadn't known he was trapped in. The walk back to the cabin was a quiet, somber procession. Leo led the way, with Alara following, a hand resting on each girl's shoulder. The initial relief of their reunion had faded, replaced by the heavy reality of their situation. They were strangers in a strange land, with nothing but the clothes on their backs and a grief that was almost tangible. Back inside, the cabin felt different, smaller somehow, now filled with their otherworldly presence. Leo busied himself building up the fire, then rummaged in his closet for more suitable clothing. He found soft flannel shirts and sweatpants that he safety pinned to fit the girls, who watched him with wide, curious eyes. For Alara, he offered one of his own heavy knit sweaters. It swamped her slender frame, but she pulled it close around her, a faint, grateful smile touching her lips for the first time. Thank you, Leo, she said, her voice soft. For everything. It's nothing, he murmured, feeling a strange warmth spread through his chest. As the day wore on, a delicate routine established itself. Leo made a simple stew for dinner, and Alara surprised him by knowing which wild herbs from his garden would complement it. They worked side by side in the small kitchen, a silent, comfortable coordination forming between them. The girls, comforted by Alara's presence, began to relax. Kira even laughed, a sound like ringing crystal. When Leo showed her how to whittle a small piece of scrap wood into the shape of a bird. That night, as the twin moons rose, large and luminous in the clear sky, Alara grew quiet. She stood by the window, watching them, her expression haunted. "The moons are full," she whispered. "It is the night for remembrance, for saying goodbye when there is no body to bury." Leo came to stand beside her. "What do you need?" She turned to him, her eyes glistening. "To go back to the glade. We need to sing Lyria's spirit to the stars." Without a word, Leo fetched the girls' makeshift coats and his own jacket. They walked back through the moonlit forest, the path now familiar. The darkness held at bay by the brilliant moonshine. In the center of the glade, Alara had Senna and Kira stand before her. She began to sing. It was not a song of words, but of pure, heartbreaking melody. Her voice rose and fell, weaving through the night air, a tapestry of love and loss. As she sang, she moved her hands, and from her fingertips drifted tiny, shimmering motes of light. Like captured starlight, the lights swirled around the girls, dancing and intertwining, before rising slowly towards the sky, as if carrying the song up to the heavens. Senna and Kira watched, their faces upturned, tears streaming down their cheeks in silent silver lines. Leo watched from the edge of the trees, his own throat tight. He was an intruder on this intimate ritual, yet he felt privileged to witness it, to see the raw, beautiful expression of their love. When the last note faded and the final spark of light vanished into the cosmos, the glade fell into a deep, respectful silence. Alara knelt and pulled the girls into a long, tight embrace. As they walked back, Kira, exhausted from emotion, fell asleep in Leo's arms as he carried her. Senna walked close to Alara, their hands clasped tightly. Back at the cabin, they settled the girls into Leo's bed, deeming it more comfortable than the couch. Alara tucked them in, singing a soft, lilting lullaby until their breathing evened out in sleep. She came back into the living room to find Leo staring into the embers of the fire. He looked up as she entered. "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard," he said quietly. "It is our way," she said, sinking into the armchair opposite him. "We believe that love is a light that never truly goes out. We were just helping Lyria's light find its way home." They sat in silence for a long while, the fire crackling between them. The shared experience had bridged the vast gap between their worlds. "You lost someone, too," Alara stated softly. "It wasn't a question." Leo nodded, his eyes fixed on the flames. "My wife, Enna. It was a long time ago. An illness. After she was gone, the world just felt loud. So I came here to be quiet." "And have you been?" Alara asked. "Quiet? Or just alone?" The question struck him with the force of a physical blow. He looked at her, truly looked at her, sitting in his chair, wearing his sweater, her violet eyes seeing right through him. "I thought they were the same thing," he admitted, his voice rough. Until today, a soft understanding passed between them. He had given her and the girls shelter, but in doing so, they had pulled him out of the tomb of his own making. Alara rose from her chair and came to sit on the hearth rug near his feet, looking up at him. "Lyria and I, we promised we would always look after each other," she whispered. "Now, I have only them, and the silence of this world is vast. You don't have to face it alone," Leo said, the words a vow. He reached out, hesitantly, and his fingers brushed a strand of her white hair from her face. She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into the touch, closing her eyes for a brief moment. In the quiet of the cabin, with the memory of a stellar melody hanging in the air, the first fragile thread of a new connection was spun, not from shared joy, but from shared sorrow and the brave, tentative hope that comes after. A week passed, and a new, fragile normalcy settled over the cabin. Leo called his workshop and took a leave of absence, his world narrowing to the four walls of his home, and the three beings who had filled it with a light he hadn't known was missing. He taught Senna how to sandwood until it was smooth as silk, and he carved a small menagerie of animals for Kira, who ranged them in elaborate, whispered stories on the rug. Alara, in turn, showed him how to listen to the forest, not just hear it. but understand the language of the birds and the sigh of the wind. A quiet affection was blooming between Leo and Alara, a thing of soft glances and hands brushing while washing dishes, of shared smiles over the girls' heads. It was tender and slow, a delicate plant growing in the shade of their mutual loss. This peace was shattered on a bright, cold morning. Leo was splitting logs out back while Alara and the girls gathered kindling at the tree line. The sharp crack of his axe was followed by another sound, a gruff, human voice. "Well, I'll be damned. I heard rumors, but I didn't believe it." Leo froze, axe in mid-swing, and turned. Corbin, a burly local hunter known for his suspicion of anything unnatural, stood at the edge of the clearing, his rifle slung over his shoulder. His eyes weren't on Leo. They were fixed on Alara and the girls, who had frozen like statues, their bundles of twigs forgotten at their feet. "Corbin," Leo said, his voice carefully neutral as he lowered the axe. "What can I do for you?" "Who are they, Leo?" Corbin asked, his gaze sweeping over Alara's amethyst skin and the girl's snow-white hair. "They ain't from around here. They don't even look right." "They're my family," Leo said, the words coming out with a firmness that surprised even him. He walked forward, positioning himself between Corbin and his family. "Family?" Corbin snorted. "You don't have any family. Anna's been gone for years. These are things. Just showed up. People are talking. Strange lights in the woods. It ain't natural." His eyes narrowed. "I think I need to call this in. Let the authorities figure out what you're harboring out here." Fear, cold and sharp, pierced Leo's heart. He saw Alara take a step back, pulling the girls close. He saw the terror in Senna's eyes, the same terror she'd had that first night. The sanctuary he had promised them was being threatened. Something in Leo snapped. The quiet, retiring man who avoided conflict evaporated. He straightened to his full height, his hands curling into fists at his sides. He took a step towards Corbin, and the intensity in his eyes made the larger man take an involuntary step back. "You listen to me." "Corbin," Leo's voice was low, but it cut through the crisp air like a blade. "That woman and those children are under my protection. They have done nothing wrong. They have lost everything, and they have found a home here with me. If you think for 1 second that I will let you or anyone else threaten them, you are gravely mistaken." He took another step forward, his gaze unwavering. "You call whoever you want, but you tell them this first. You tell them that Leo Garrett stands with them, that this is their home, and that anyone who tries to take them from me will have to go through me first. Do you understand?" Corbin stared at him, his bravado faltering in the face of Leo's raw, protective fury. He'd known Leo for years as the quiet, keep-to-himself woodworker. He'd never seen this fire in him. "Look, Leo, I didn't mean." Corbin began, backpedaling. "I think you should leave," Leo interrupted, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Now, and if I see you on my property again, the authorities you'll be dealing with won't be the ones you're thinking of." Corbin paled slightly. He gave one last, uneasy look at Alara and the girls, then turned and disappeared back into the woods without another word. The moment he was gone, the tension drained from Leo's body, leaving him shaking. He turned to face Alara. She was staring at him, her hand over her mouth, her violet eyes wide with a mixture of fear and something else, awe, and a profound, overwhelming gratitude. Without a word, she crossed the distance between them and threw her arms around his neck, burying her face in his shoulder. He held her tightly, feeling her tremble against him. "You would do that for us?" She whispered into his jacket. "You would stand against your own kind?" "You are my kind," he whispered back, his lips against her hair. "All three of you." When they pulled apart, Senna was standing there, looking up at Leo with an expression he had never seen on her face before. Pure, unguarded respect. "You were brave," she said solemnly. "So are you," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. The shadow had been confronted. The threat hadn't vanished, but it had been faced down. And in that moment, Leo knew that his vow wasn't just about protection. It was about belonging. He had not just offered them shelter. He had declared to the world, and to himself, that they were his, and he was theirs. The confrontation with Corbin left a lingering unease, but it also solidified something unshakable within the cabin's walls. The tentative affection between Leo and Alara bloomed openly now, no longer hidden in glances, but expressed in easy touches and shared smiles. They were a unit, a fortress. A few days later, Leo drove into the small town for supplies, his heart pounding with a nervous energy. He went to the county clerk's office, a place he hadn't visited in years. He asked for forms, his hands steady as he filled them out, declaring himself the legal guardian of Senna and Kira. He listed their home address as his own. The clerk, a woman who remembered Anna, gave him a curious look but asked no questions. The paperwork was a formality, a piece of human bureaucracy to shield his otherworldly family. But it felt like a sacred oath. When he returned, the cabin was filled with the smell of baking. Alara, with the girls as her eager assistants, had attempted to make bread using his mother's old recipe. The result was lopsided and dense, but it was warm and made with love. They celebrated with the misshapen loaf and a hearty soup, and it felt like a feast. That evening, after the girls were asleep, Leo and Alara sat on the porch, wrapped in a single blanket, watching the stars emerge. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with the understanding of everything that had been said and done. "Leo," Alara said softly, breaking the quiet, "there is something I must tell you." He turned to her, his heart stuttering for a moment. Fearing bad news, she took his hand and placed it gently on her abdomen. "The energy of this world. It is different. It quickens life. I was not sure until now, but I am." She looked into his eyes, her own shimmering with a mix of fear and wondrous hope. "I am with child. Our child." Leo stared at her, the words washing over him. A child, his child, their child. The last, lonely fragments of his old life shattered and blew away, replaced by a future so bright and full it stole his breath. A laugh, pure and joyful, bubbled up from his chest. Are you happy?" Alara asked, her voice tentative. "Happy?" He breathed, pulling her into his arms. "Alara, it's a miracle." He kissed her then, not with the gentle tenderness of before, but with a fierce, joyous passion that spoke of a love reborn from ashes. This is everything." The next morning, they told the girls. Kira was delighted by the idea of a new cousin. Senna, ever thoughtful, placed a hand on Alara's stomach with a look of solemn responsibility. "I will teach them everything," she vowed. The following weeks were a whirlwind of quiet preparation. Leo began building a cradle in his workshop, the scent of fresh cedar filling the air. Alara sewed tiny clothes from soft fabrics Leo brought from town, her stitches neat and sure. The cabin was no longer just a refuge. It was a nest, a home being actively woven together by 4 soon-to-be 5 pairs of hands. One night, as the first snow began to fall, dusting the pines in white, they all sat together in front of the fire. Kira was asleep with her head in Leo's lap. Senna was leaning against Alara, half dozing, and Leo's arm was around Alara's shoulders, his hand resting protectively on her growing belly. He looked around the room, at the wood carvings on the mantel, the lopsided bread bowl now kept as a treasure, the sketches Alara had made of their family taped to the wall. His gaze fell on the newest drawing, made by Senna that very day. It showed 5 figures standing before the cabin: Leo, Alara, Senna, Kira, and a small, round-bodied child held in Alara's arms. Above them, the twin moons shone, and the stars were arranged not as they were in the sky, but in a new, unique pattern, a constellation of their own making. Alara followed his gaze and smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "A new constellation," she whispered, echoing his thoughts. "Yes," Leo said, his voice thick with emotion. He pressed a kiss to her hair. "Our constellation." The storm had passed. The quiet he had once sought so desperately was now filled with the sounds of life, of love, of a family found not by blood, but by fate and forged in starlight. The man who came home to 2 little girls in his kitchen had, in the end, found everything he never knew he was missing. He was finally, completely home.